Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and look at the absolute anatomy of a massive success. I want you to set your mind back to the wild west of Silicon Valley around 2010. The App Store was essentially this massive gold rush, and literally everyone was scrambling to build the next big thing. Well, today, we're going to explore one of the most cinematic, dramatic, and ultimately lucrative pivots in business history. We hear that word pivot thrown around constantly in the tech space, usually as kind of a polite synonym for failure, right? But rarely does a change in direction yield this kind of explosive, mind-bending success story. We're going to unpack the exact strategic mechanics, the underlying psychology, and quite frankly, the raw courage it took to strip a failing, cluttered concept down to its absolute bare essentials, turning what was basically a sinking ship into a global obsession. $1 billion. Let that staggeringly huge number sink in for a second. That was the paradigm-shifting acquisition price paid by Facebook to acquire this platform. A platform that, as we know now, eventually evolved into a giant worth well over $100 billion. When Mark Zuckerberg made that offer back in 2012, the entire industry was absolutely stunned. It was met with widespread skepticism and just outright shock. People seriously thought it was a wildly inflated dot-com bubble-type valuation for a company that, get this, had exactly zero revenue and a team of just 13 employees. When you see an exit number with that many zeros attached to it, it's so incredibly easy to just assume the path to get there was a straight, smooth line of pure genius, a flawless execution from day one. But the real story, the reality behind that billion-dollar valuation, was actually built on a highly unstable foundation of deep frustration, initial failure, and a profoundly difficult realization. And the craziest part is the sheer velocity of this evolution. It's almost hard to comprehend. In the early months of 2010, the original app, which was named Burbn, was pushed live. And, well, it struggled. It was incredibly noisy. But in that exact same year, the founders managed to execute a radical pivot, entirely retooling their codebase and launched Instagram at midnight. Then, just 24 months later, Facebook swoops in with that historic billion-dollar acquisition. Going from a confused, cluttered startup fighting just to survive to a massive cultural behemoth in a 2-year sprint is an exhausting, completely dizzying trajectory. It defies almost every traditional rule of business growth you'll ever read about. So how on earth did they pull off a turnaround of this magnitude in such a condensed, high-pressure window of time? Let's break down the strategy. Section 1. The Clutter of Burbn. So, before the billion-dollar exit and the glamorous headlines, there was Burbn. Founder Kevin Systrom originally built it with this huge ambition to be the ultimate social utility. It was designed to do absolutely everything a user could possibly want to do on their phone. You could check into local bars, you could coordinate future plans with your whole social circle, you could earn these little points, and yeah, you could share photos. It is such a classic psychological trap that incredibly smart founders fall into all the time, the Swiss Army knife fallacy. It's that dangerous assumption that simply adding more utility automatically equals more value. But for the actual beta users who were just trying to navigate the app, it created massive cognitive overload. The interface was clunky, the value proposition was super muddy, and the app was simply too confusing to use on a daily basis. But trying so hard to be exceptional at literally everything, Burbn was basically succeeding at absolutely nothing. Section 2. The Data Epiphany. When you build a product, you naturally carry a really strong, preconceived bias about how your users are going to interact with it. But Systrom and his team did something crucial. They started looking deeply into their back-end server logs. And what they found was a massive, glaring disconnect between their grand vision and the actual reality of user behavior. The data revealed an undeniable truth. The core premise of the app, the check-ins and the complex social planning that literally took months and months to code, was being almost entirely ignored. But there was this one specific behavior keeping the servers warm. A massive subset of users were completely bypassing all the fancy social coordination tools because they were absolutely obsessed with the photo sharing functionality. The data was loudly, undeniably telling the founders that their original vision was totally wrong. But beautifully, in that failure, a hidden goldmine was rapidly emerging. Section 3. The Radicals Stripped Down. Armed with this cold, hard data, Systrom and his co-founder Mike Krieger faced a truly agonizing choice. Anyone who has ever written code or managed a large creative project knows the visceral, stomach-dropping pain of hitting backspace on months of hard work. It is deeply unnatural to throw away features you literally bled to create. But to survive, they knew they had to be ruthless. They had to kill their darlings. So they took a machete to their codebase, amputating the check-ins, deleting the point systems, and stripping away all that heavy bloat. They isolated the one single feature that users actually loved, transitioning from an overwhelming, cluttered mess into a stark, highly focused, single-use powerhouse. It took immense, gut-wrenching courage to admit their original premise was flawed and bet the entire future of the company on just one isolated feature. But here's the genius part. They didn't just strip the app down and leave a hollow shell. They took that single photo feature and optimized it to sheer perfection by introducing filters. Now, to truly understand why this was such a revolution, you have to remember the context of early mobile technology. Back in 2010, smartphone cameras were frankly terrible. The lenses were tiny, the sensors were incredibly weak, and photos consistently came out looking dark, blurry, and just muddy. Filters solved a massive psychological and technical problem right then and there. With just one tap, a filter like X Pro 2 or Early Bird could take a terribly lit, boring photo of a coffee cup and instantly make it look cinematic, moody, and totally professional. It essentially democratized art for the everyday smartphone user. It wasn't just a basic color tint, it was an instant psychological upgrade to the user's perceived lifestyle. And that, right there, is true product market fit.
Section 4. The Midnight Launch Flywheel. So, after months of frantic coding, pivoting, and deleting, Instagram officially launched to the public at midnight. Now, you can only imagine the tension in that room. The founders were exhausted, holding their breath, secretly terrified that deleting all of their previous work was a monumental career-ending mistake. But as it turns out, they didn't have to wait very long for an answer. By the very next morning, the floodgates had completely blown open. An astonishing 25,000 users had already downloaded and flooded the platform overnight. The servers actually began groaning and buckling under the sheer weight of the traffic. It was this immediate, unbridled success that practically set the internet on fire, instantly transforming their intense anxiety into a frantic, adrenaline-fueled scramble just to keep the app online.
And the engine driving this absurd overnight virality, it was an elegantly simple, entirely frictionless loop. In the tech industry, we talk a lot about reducing time to value. Well, this loop is the absolute masterclass in that concept. Step 1, snap a mobile photo. Step 2, tap a filter to mask the poor camera quality. Step 3, instantly broadcast it to other established networks like Twitter and Facebook. By removing all the cognitive friction, they empowered users seamlessly. They took an action that used to require downloading photos to a bulky computer, opening up complex software like Photoshop and manually editing, and they reduced the whole shebang to 3 simple taps on a piece of glass. When you make a user feel incredibly talented with zero effort, virality isn't just possible, it's almost guaranteed.
Section 5. The Lesson of Less.
As Kevin Systrom learned through sheer trial, error, and a whole lot of stress, finding true product market fit rarely comes from building a massive, sprawling ecosystem from day one. It comes from doing one thing perfectly instead of 10 things poorly. In today's landscape, product bloat is absolutely everywhere. The temptation to add another feature, integrate the latest shiny trend, or tack on just one more bullet point to your offering is incredibly seductive. We just inherently equate addition with progress. But true power, absolute clarity, and undeniable market dominance almost always lie in the courage of subtraction. Think about it. Instagram became a $100 billion giant not because of all the things they built, but entirely because of what they were brave enough to delete. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to really sit with. Whether you are coding software, building a startup, or honestly just managing your own daily workflow, where are you trying to do 10 things poorly when you could be doing one thing perfectly? What is the one feature, the one major distraction that you need to radically strip away right now to uncover your true core value? Take a hard, honest look at your own clutter, because ruthlessly deleting your own hard work might just be the exact key you need to unlock your ultimate success. Thanks for joining me on this one.